Okay, we'll go ahead and call this council work session to order. It's Wednesday, March 6th. The time is 2 p.m. I'll go ahead and open it up for visitor comments. If you'd like to come on up, please state your name to the record and keep it to 3 minutes or less.
Absolutely. Yes. Go ahead. You stood up first, you're up. How y'all doing? It's me again. William Goulart, survivor, stage 4 colon cancer, stage 4 liver cancer. I'm here to reintroduce because I think some people may not know some of the story that I'm about to talk about the Flying Eagle canoe. Rick, you know the Flying Eagle canoe? John, you know the Flying Eagle canoe. You were here when I believe the council asked us to carve it, correct?
Not that long.
You weren't here that long ago? But you know that this council had asked us to carve a canoe for you guys. And then I actually came in front of the council 17 years ago, 16 years ago, something like that. And asked if we could give it a story. Because at the time it was just a log. Can we play that? This is one of your
Drinking warm water before bed resets blood sugar levels and reverses altitude.
Probably
Thousands of people.
from the start would be great. A minute long. If we could go from the beginning. Excellent. So it's a great video. One of your former counselors you'll see on here, Patrick. Across the waters, how can it be? Sunshine out there. Have it right there. So basically what you got is I've probably put 4,000 people on that canoe and given them rides. The next one down is a nice 15-minute video that shows us at the Portland Blues Festival, which is where we were for 13 years. We're really excited starting again this year. John, I know one of your concerns was that there's a $2 million liability, that if that canoe flips over and somebody dies, you guys would be responsible for that. You've always asked me to get insurance. I've always fought that and said, why can't the city cover that, which it did for many years. 4 years ago, as I was going through cancer, there seemed to be some friction between me and everybody in this world. You fight for your life, you fight everybody around you. Please don't be upset at me for fighting for my life. Every day of my life, I've always spoke about the Flying Eagle. Once we carved it, it's St. Helens, and it should be shared. That's why it was carved. We carved it to share it. Number one, I'm going to be giving you guys a proposal tonight. We would like to share it with some TV stations in Portland, and I'd like to be taking it to some schools this year. I'm going to be spending the summer in Wheeler, where I live. We are looking into getting some insurance because, yeah, you know, John, I like to put people in the canoe, just like one of your counselors just was. I don't really expect anybody to say anything, but that's your guys' canoe. And it's a national treasure. That went back and forth. It went back across America and did what you guys asked it to do. And it was shared with thousands. It went through the National Memorial Day Parade in Washington, D.C. It was carved by John Rusky, Quapaw native, through the vision of a Warm Springs native from your community, Ferris Sorensen. So if there's any questions about the Eagle, man, I just want to share it. That's what it's supposed to be. I just want to give it the love, the honor, and the respect that this council and everybody should give it. It's just a tree, man. Don't be scared of the tree. That's me. God bless.
Hey, other visitor comments?
Al Peterson, 101 St. Helens Street. Have you guys read my email? Okay, then I won't read my email to you again. But I did want to bring up a couple of other things briefly. the definition of a Superfund site is the following. Superfund is a United States federal environmental remediation program established by the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act of 1980. The program is administered by the EPA. This is off the EPA's website. The program is designed to investigate and clean up sites contaminated with hazardous substances. Right off of the EPA's website. So you have been listening to these consultants that you've been hiring now for, I would say, going on 6 years, 7 years. And I've kind of just watched what's been happening, and all the time, and in fact, I went back through all the city's documents. Nowhere in those documents does it mention anything remotely related to hazardous substances. The consultants have been saying, oh no, we're not going to have hazardous substances. We're not going to have hazardous substances. We're not going to get hazardous. But, you know, the definition of a Superfund site is a site that is contaminated with hazardous substances. So then there's a little sentence that I did have in my email, and I'm just going to go ahead and read that, which is right out of the city's own document, wastewater lagoon site 2018 strategic plan for repurposing the wastewater lagoon. Financial projections are that the landfill are based on large part by market demand for dredging sediment disposal capacity to support the Portland Harbor Superfund site, which by definition is a site contaminated with hazardous materials. So you guys are elected to kind of connect the dots, but I don't see a connection of the dots. All right, last dot is what I sent you in my email, which has to do with leachate. The last time I heard about leachate was when I was in high school and Walter Cronkite was coming on the national news practically weekly, talking about toxic sites across the United States and the reason that the EPA was created in the first place. Well, what is leachate? Leachate is a liquid that is produced when you have moisture, you have solid waste, and you have pressure because you've piled it all on top of each other, and it basically ferments, and then out of the bottom of this percolating pile is leachate. And what I sent to you is a definition of leachate. Leachate, by definition, is a hazardous, toxic material. So now you are going to consider tonight on your presentation, and I'm going to frankly say that city staff and your consultants have been very skillful in trying to not ever say the word landfill, not ever say the word hazardous, not ever say it. But now in their presentation tonight and in their proposal, they have leachate. And part of their thing is to study the leachate that will be coming out of whatever it is they're going to be piling in the wastewater lagoon. So all along, we have been going down this trail, and all along, one, we knew this stuff was coming from a Superfund site. However, on the other hand, somebody keeps telling us that, oh no, it's not hazardous. Let's see, Superfund site, hazardous, not hazardous? You gotta make the connection. And now the connection pretty much has been made in their own proposal. Your consultant's own proposal talks about leachate. Okay, so then my next question is leachate. Leachate percolating through a big pile of stuff that came from a Superfund site. So if it percolates through a normal garbage dump and it's hazardous, what happens when it percolates through stuff that came from a Superfund site. So then the other question, which I asked in my email is, okay, if we're just gonna get rid of that wastewater lagoon, nobody in everything that, all the documentation that I've seen and the plans that they've shown, nobody is showing or mentioning, let's see, we're gonna fill that whole thing up. What happens to the wastewater treatment plant? Where's it gonna go? Well, I did hear a number of years ago, some wild idea, but oh, we're just gonna take it, we're gonna move it up to the other Boise property, and then we're gonna build something up there, and it's gonna get it away from the river. Well, here you are piling up a big pile of stuff that is considered hazardous from a Superfund site, and then you're gonna somehow pump all of the sewer that trickles all the way downhill to down here, and then we're gonna pump it up past the fairgrounds and build something up there. It makes absolutely no sense. So my recommendation to you is you just stop everything immediately until you really decide, does the city of St. Helens really want stuff piled up from a Superfund site in St. Helens? And then number two, does St. Helens really want to deal with leachate that comes out of stuff from a hazardous waste site? Thank you.
Any other visitor comments?
Howard Blumenthal, St. Helens. I just wanted to back up a little bit with Willow Bill about how neat the Flying Eagle was, how much time and effort was put in to create the thing. There was even t-shirts made at one point for people that were what we called first squad, that were some of the first paddlers in those boats. And it's very important to try to keep that boat in working condition. It was a gem for it to have ever been built. A lot of effort and community volunteers. I think you said 400 or 500 kids over that time period helped carve that thing. And I really think we need to get it out and have it where people can enjoy it. They can see the beautiful work on that boat. From what I understand, it's probably under a tarp in the corner of some city yard. Not, that tarps leak. Boats like that need to have maintenance. People need to work on it. At one point, I even heard that they were thinking of just taking it, putting it out on a flat stand, drilling holes in the bottom of it so that it wouldn't hold water. Boat like that needs to be in the water. That's what it was made for. That's what everybody's vision is, to see it be in the water. If you've never paddled it, I suggest that you guys get it together and make sure it's still seaworthy and go out and enjoy it, and then you'll see what a gem it is. It really should be out where people can see it. I don't know the last time that it was even out, although was it out on one of the parades on the truck? But it's a beautiful boat. It needs to be out there so more people can see it and see what St. Helens and what this area was like in the early days. So, thank you.
Any other visitor comments? He's got a big stick.
I'm like, Darren hates this right now. He hates it.
He's our IT guy, everybody's watching, he's trying to figure stuff out this evening.
Brady Brand. I wanted to introduce Brandon Sundin. This is John Walsh, City Administrator. John, this is Brandon. We sit a couple of desks apart, but apparently there's zero communication between the two of you. At our last city council meeting, you stated there's gonna be an RFP process for tourism. And you said you're working on a contract. Both cannot be true. So one of you is either lying or an idiot. I don't know which one is which or which one is worse, but you cannot be working on a tourism contract and be doing an RFP. So I know you don't usually answer, but at some point in time, I hope that one of you will tell me, are you working on the contract like you said? Or are you doing an RFP like you said? And because I think we have a right to know what is the process that's going on with tourism. It is ridiculous that we are treating our tourism director and the way that we're treating her. And he needs to have a contract. And again, if you do an RFP, it's also ridiculous that you think that you're gonna change the director in the middle of June, right, as 13 Nights is going. That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard of. If you wanna do an RFP, you need to extend your contract through the end of this year and do an RFP for 2025. And you do need to do it now, I agree, because it will take a process. It's going to take time to do an RFP. And be also expecting to pay way more. Scappoose pays $100,000 to their tourism contractor for a one-day event. A one-day event. We pay $120,000, which you actually get back from our contractor, and she does 40 days. So anyone that's gonna bid on this contract is going to bid more than $120,000. I can guarantee it. So be prepared for the heat when you send out an RFP and it comes back and it's $200,000 or $300,000. Be prepared for that anger because it will be directed at you. And it's like, I don't understand of all the crap that's happens in the city, of all the things that you do wrong, the one thing that you've done right is tourism. And how this is a complicated decision to renew a contract for someone who has a successful track record, done a good job, and instead of saying, thank you, please, you want to continually try and act like there's some problem, and there's not. And I know that there are people that have said that there's a problem, but again, it doesn't matter. This is not about Tina. This is not about E2C. This is about tourism. I've been there from like when the chamber did the tourism contract. I know that those people were yelled at then. They've been yelled at. I mean, the guy before Tina left as a broken man. We have chewed up and spit out every single tourism person that we've had. It is not particular to her. Doesn't matter who we get, there are gonna be complaints. That's just the way life is. But you should be smart enough to know that she's done an exemplary job, deserves to have a contract, and it's stupid to do an RFP, but I don't mind that you do one, but you need to do it now for 2025, not for a contract that will expire halfway through.
I'd just like to state for the record that neither one of these two gentlemen are idiots.
Well, good.
And I really don't appreciate that in this council chambers. Nobody reciprocates that to people when they come in and give public testimony. I want this to be a safe environment for all. It should not be a hostile environment. You can be emotional, I get that. That's a lot different than just being disrespectful. What has happened is we had looked at the contract and it was identified by our attorney that it needed to go out for an RFP because it was overdue. So that's what has transpired is he was looking at the contract, which morphed into our attorney saying, wait a minute, we have to put it out for an RFP. Anybody watching, they do communicate, we do communicate, we understand what's going on here. Anybody else like to make public comment? Yep.
My name is Ron Tromlins. I am here as a reminder of what happened during the St. Helens W449 rehabilitation contract failure and what caused the condition of the misdiagnosed 2 million gallon reservoir. This led to the death of the reservoir. The city has a lot to account for by their actions and participation. This problem resulted in the city possessing an empty, damaged reservoir for 6 years. This resulted in the city giving no explanation for the failed condition of the reservoir. This resulted in the city, John Walsh, claiming client privilege as a way to avoid public disclosure, thereby deceiving the public as to the cause of the W449 reservoir rehabilitation failure. The city paid a third-party investigation of the rehabilitation failure for cause and responsibility. The city is claiming it was the fault of Western Partition's workmanship. Their investigation assessment was that the liner was not the cause of the excessive water loss and marked areas with blue tape for patching and correction. Their investigation led a group tour of concerned parties on the reservoir observation in December 2017. The group all agreed the liner was not the problem and was located elsewhere. WPI's contract called for painting and sealing. WPI continued working on corrections, but stopped contracted work in 2019. WPI stated that to continue working would not prove successful. Any evidence and disagreement over WPI's work will be destroyed on demolition for replacement. All of this is without Walker Consultants' confirmation of cause and responsibility and is now hidden in the city's client privilege report. I continue searching city records and the city's participation that resulted in the rehabilitation failure. Walker Consultants' report had now become client privilege. I am not sure if it's John or the attorney who is controlling party of the report. John told me he didn't see why I couldn't receive a copy, but later rescinded. The lawyer declared adamantly that I was not going to receive a copy. My persistence in trying to acquire a copy of the Walker report was beginning to worry a party. During the intermission of the November 16th, 2022 council meeting, I received a messenger with a message of consequences of my continued interest in the rehabilitation failure. Mohammed Zaire approached me and gave me the message that I needed to stop probing the reservoir failure. The message I was irritating people with deep pockets who were considering suing me, and I would lose my house and everything I own. So I'm here to say intimidation hasn't stopped me, and I've already made known which party was most concerned with my involvement. Thank you.
Visitor comments?
Tina Curry with events. I just wanted to give you a quick update. I'm very close to getting all the bands lined up for 13 Nights on the River. And we might have some additional Sunday concerts this year that are going to be happening. It's been a little bit of a process, but it's coming together, so we should be able to release and announce which bands are coming, hopefully by the end of this week. It's just taken me a little bit longer. I also want to see if you have any ideas or comments or something that you can do regarding parking and code enforcement downtown. There's a lot of conversation going on regarding either no code enforcement or some code enforcement or haphazard code enforcement, and it's creating things that don't need to happen down here. So I'm hoping that you can maybe push something forward that is verbally a public statement or something like that you're going to be enforcing it or not. That would be really helpful, I think, because it's creating animosity that doesn't need to really be in this downtown right now. The other thing is that we're working on going over with engineering and the county to just determine as close as we can when streets will be open and when they won't be open. I can honestly say I've never had more balls in the air than I do right now that are not put away. So it's going to be a challenge.
Just so you know that the council is working on this too, because we understand that there may be a possibility where this doesn't even happen down here with everything going on.
Yeah,
I've heard some pushback about that, but I just wanted to give you a heads up so you're not blindsided that the council is also looking at further venues, at least one, but maybe possibly two, because of all the construction, not only just between the city two projects, but the county has multiple projects going on as well.
Yeah,
So
I talked to
Yes, they're not
her
lucky.
yesterday about that, so that I could get.
kind of already in motion and we're looking for some help in that and exploring those ideas. So hopefully we can sit down and talk in the near future.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so, the, other thing that I wanted to. Hopefully, I think that there's probably something that we should do to maybe even have a little calendar timeline so that we can direct people to it. And they can see what's coming up next, because I think nobody is really prepared for what's coming up Strand Street. And what that might look like
The
for
big-
them.
It's Colonel's friend.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other visitor comments?
Steve Topaz, St. Helens Street. I got a scorecard to read today. Back in 1980, the EPA indicated that stormwater and sewer had to be separated, sanitary sewer. That's only when the problem started. The drainage between Third and Fourth Street, in this investigation by the EPA, said that 45 times the sanitary flow was the storm flow. And yet when the city did the project, they closed off all storm flow and sealed the sanitary. So not only did we not have stormwater removal, we then added some lines to it on the order of $500,000. And the line coming down Third Street from from Columbia Boulevard got a number of storm drains in the right place. The last one is 1 inch above where the water is, so the water flows across the sidewalks into Third and Fourth Street. Now, similarly, we had another stormwater line across Fourth Street between Columbia Boulevard and White Street into Godfrey Park. That project was scheduled for 3 weeks. It took 3 months. All of these things obviously have monies involved in it. Now, Godfrey Park, the ditchless stream line was for $1 million to push a line under Second Street all the way over to the marina. We forgot to do some engineering, and that project cost another $1 million on top of that. Okay, then further up Fourth Street, kind of north of West Street, we basically again sealed the sanitary line, so it was only sanitary. And then we had water flowing across Fourth Street into the houses, and that required another amount of engineering work, again at a cost. Now, in the same attitude, Sykes Road line capacity after the I&I project basically stopped the housing development west of there, mainly because there was a family who wanted to turn their old farm into a little development, but with the sanitary line at capacity, that shot that down. Of course, they paid for the architectural design. Now, Ron has talked a lot about the reservoir leakage and repair that's not been done correctly. The estimated cost to fix that's about $10 million. Okay, now, another project we had was the RV park behind the rec center. There's architectural costs about that. And we all of a sudden found out after that was done that next to the street, there's a exclusion zone. So that project died. We also had the connector project from Route 30 to downtown. We've got traffic circle problems, flood plain problems, and that connector was never done. We did pay the consultant fees on that. Now we have the Gateway project right here in St. Helens and First Street. That got stopped. A lot of redesign has to be done. Again, we have a bunch of extra costs there. We have the purchase of the waterfront property without having a professional survey done. We lose the taxable property. We find out we've got contaminated soil and water intrusion. No provisions for cleanup with the seller. And the consultant warning that non-residential units can be built on the property only after cleanup. Now, the Riverside Park was designed and redesigned by the architect several times, and that hasn't gotten under construction yet. Now, we have a kayak fishing dock that's still up in the air. We purchased the White Mill property, again, without having a professional survey done. The contamination abatement, the in-water abatement areas, and this is discussed between Boise and the state, basically say you can't use the waterfront anymore along that. The sale of a central portion of the mill property eliminates a single large-scale facility being placed there. As you remember, we were offered $4 million for 9 acres. We gave it to them for $1.5 million without payment and some funny stuff with the contract. Now, we have a company that would like to buy that whole area, and what's that 9 acres gonna cost them? Is that gonna stop the property? We also have some architectural work on subdividing the White Mill property into a number of smaller units to form an industrial park without knowledge of ground condition, custom requirements, or power needs. Not a way to design stuff. You also know about the police station placement, the finance not being adequately investigated, and roughly $6 million in architectural fees. We have an awful lot of courts, we have a lot of promises. One of the promises that was made, and I would bring this up because I hear other promises, the marijuana place, February of 18, said they're gonna bring 200 family wage jobs into town. Well, that never happened. Now I see we're gonna bring 1,000 family wage jobs into this other facility. Let's hope somebody's right, because most of this has been expenses out that didn't even come close to the truth. Thank you.
Any other visitor comments? Anybody online?
Diana Weiner.
Okay.
Let me get her in here.
Diana, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Diana Weiner. I'm a resident here in St. Helens. I just wanted to come today to support the presentations that are scheduled for both Main Street and for the library. I serve on the board of both, and I want to just make a statement in praise of the work that both organizations are doing. Main Street has brought hundreds of thousands of dollars of state and other grant funding into the city to help preserve our historic buildings and keep the character of our city while also helping support local business owners. Similarly, the library puts on a lot of programs that serve individuals in our community that would otherwise go unserved by the city. I think both organizations are really important to the future of St. Helens. I know that we are facing significant budget issues and that there has been discussion of cutting funding specifically for the library. It's been suggested by other citizens who've come forward. And I just want to say, as a bright kid growing up in a low-income neighborhood and an abusive home where over half my class dropped out of high school rather than graduate, a library was one of the things that saved my life. And having access to books and educated people who could help me find things and research and even figure out when I was 21, after I'd been homeless, how to pay for college on my own and give me access to books that would explain admissions and financial aid processes to me that I otherwise would not have known about because nothing in my high school prepared me to apply to a four-year college. It's really important that we keep those things around because libraries are a place of hope for hopeless people. And so I want to thank you for your consideration and for giving both organizations an opportunity to present today, because I think they're important to not just the future of the people who currently live here, but all of our future citizens at all ages. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any others? Okay, I'll ask you to hit the stopwatch so it doesn't go off on our next presentation. Okay, our first item on our agenda is a St. Helens Main Street Alliance, semi-annual report. There's Salisbury, the president here, and I see a few other members here.
Few other board members. Hey, is it okay if I stand? Is that-
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that work with them?
Whatever you're
recording
comfortable
and all
with.
of that?
Okay, yep.
Thank you. I sometimes just need to move a little bit. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm here to give you your partnership report, and really the goal of this presentation is to kind of just remind you or explain for the first time to some of you what Main Street is. Who we are, what we do, and I guess what I hope is that by the end of this report, you will see why we're partners together in the work that Main Street's doing. So just kind of before we even get to the next slide, basics are, we are a 501c3. We are a registered nonprofit. We have to do all the things that a regular 501c3 would do. I'm the board president. We have other board members here. We have about 10 board members. Not about, we have actually 10 board members right now. But that means that we are doing all the things that a nonprofit corporation has to do in terms of bookkeeping, record keeping, and everything else. But part of the point of this is that we aren't just any old nonprofit. We have a very specific mission. You could go to the next slide. Main Street is about doing work that matches the philosophy of the Main Street approach, which is a national Main Street America methodology. It is built off of proven things that work. And what I'm here is to just give you a very brief framework for that. We report to not just the national Main Street, but more importantly to the Oregon Main Street, which comes out of the Oregon Parks and Recreation Division. And part of us retaining our status as a Main Street organization means that we have to match the accreditation, and there are things that we have to do to stay a Main Street organization. And the point is that Main Street organizations are really for everyone. It's not just for business owners, the way, say, a Chamber of Commerce is. It's not just for property owners. It's also for our citizens or residents or visitors. It's really for all of us that are engaged with the city that we love. At the very bottom there, you see that very small print that says, we started in 2009. We started as a 501c3 at that point. In fact, Robert Bloomberg of WANA Federal Credit Union was the first president, and he really was looking to bring a Main Street organization to this community. He'd seen it work in other communities. He'd seen what it could do in terms of development. And so that was an important part of how we got founded. St. Helens Economic Development Corporation. We are still St. Helens Economic Development Corporation with a legal DBA to be St. Helens Main Street Alliance. Next slide. So what's our district? Ta-da! It's all of this First Street historic old town, downtown, everything up Columbia Boulevard to the Holton District. One thing I want you to note is that 100% of our Main Street district is inside your urban renewal area. Okay. I think next slide. Okay, the success of any Main Street organization really comes down to how can we match this Main Street approach? And we call it the 4-point approach. So you see there are my pretty little sign up there that comes from the National Main Street. I didn't make this up. It is really about all the areas that have to happen simultaneously and together in order for an organization like this to become effective and to transform our historic downtown areas. We have to be balanced at some level. Some things move out. Every Main Street organization is a little bit different in terms of what they create and the programs they create. And that's where it comes down to. It really has to be driven by the folks who live and work and own property here. One thing I do want to note is that both Main Street America and Oregon Main Street have different tiers of accreditation. We are on the first tier in Oregon Main Street. We are, I'm gonna get this wrong, affiliated. We're at the affiliated level. And we want to level up every tier that we reach opens up new opportunities for resources we can bring to bear in our community and to our organization. So again, the higher level of engagement that we get in the community, the easier it will be for us to level up. And the more resources we can then turn around and bring back to St. Helens. Okay, next slide. Okay, so locally, this is how we try to do this 4-point thing, right? So each one of these kind of matches one of those 4 points. Organization and Outreach Committee is basically the business of running our nonprofit. So it's what do we have to do to have policies? What do we have to do to keep the lights on and pay the bills? It's also the committee that really handles volunteer recruitment and engagement, board training, those kind of crucial things that it will take to keep our organization moving forward and keep ourselves in compliance too. The Promotions Committee is just what it sounds like. Promotions Committee is about promoting things that happen inside the district or businesses inside the district. It is, in some main streets, it is the events arm of a Main Street organization. And then the Art and Design Committee is typically a placemaking committee. It is, it's where our focus on beautification would happen. If we say, manage to put together a grant and develop a big mural project with multiple murals in the community, which is on many of our wish lists, that would probably land in the Art and Design Committee's realm. The Economic Vitality Committee is a very important part of our Main Street right now. And so, but the thing I want you to understand about it as we go on to talk about it is economic vitality is about numbers. It's about tracking what are the metrics, what exists in our Main Street. What do we know about what we need financially, economically? What do we need to know about the property ownership in the district? What have other organizations done? In our Main Street, it is also the place where we are running our Oregon Main Street our revitalization grant program. Next slide. This is a key part, and this is a place where we've had a lot of success in the last few years. Oregon Main Street revitalization grants are up to $200,000. At least to this point, they have been up to $200,000. It is a statewide program. It is decided out of the Oregon Main Street organization. Again, the idea for these grants is to improve the buildings in our historic downtowns. Next slide. What makes a project eligible? There's a lot of questions, and I think within the community, it's easy to get confused about how does somebody get one of these grants and what is Main Street doing and all of that. So I just want to touch on that, and then certainly let's answer questions if you've got them later. But the idea is that projects that are eligible, we don't decide who gets a grant award. What we decide locally is which applications are we going to forward to Oregon Main Street for them to choose from. Oregon Main Street and their team and their grant selection committee decides which projects statewide are actually going to get an award. So what they're looking for is projects that are about the rehabilitation or restoration of properties, compatible new construction that meets with a district's desired strategic improvement plan. And also it can even be the acquisition of bare land, of bare property. And part of why it says planned use must meet grant requirements is that in cases where it's about the acquisition of a piece of property, it's often for say, a city to purchase a property from somebody. Maybe it's a building that needs a lot of work and there's no other developer who's gonna take that on and do it. Or a Main Street to purchase a piece of property, or some other kind of agency. The idea is that they will say you can go ahead and use money to purchase a property if what it means is you will move forward in the development of your historic district. So some Main Streets have actually done that to great success, where it's maybe a blighted piece of property and just nobody's ever getting any traction on it, but they create a deal where they can then purchase the property and maybe make whatever improvements need to be made. Or in some cases, it's also been a Main Street has purchased a piece of property and then that has become home base for Main Street. So those are things that can happen with this grant fund. But pretty much everything is about the rehabilitation of existing historic buildings. Next slide. Okay, so what have we done here in St. Helens? When I came on board at the end of 21-22, we were already midway through the Columbia Theater grant. And so right at the very beginning of 2022, we processed within 4 months about $140,000 worth of work. 2022, right at the same time period, we were wrapping up that Columbia Theater grant. We successfully applied for and won a $200,000 grant for the Klondike Tavern. 2023, earlier, just a year ago, we actually won 2 Main Street grants for both Crooked Creek and Holton Hollow, which is the new construction up across from Red Apple. Russ Hubbard owns that property. And I do want to say that I'm very proud of the fact that we won 2 grants in 1 year. It is only the 3rd time instance since this program began in 2017 that a city has won 2 grants in 1 year. I'm very proud of it. I felt like both applications were strong. It was a little bit risky to apply for 2 because they could have then decided which one wins or none win. But I'm very proud of it. Before I move past this slide, I do want to talk about our process, because again, that's another place that folks in the community seem to get confused. Again, we make an application, we decide locally which application we're going to put forward. The way we have done that the last 2 times that we have done it kind of from the start is by assembling a committee, asking for applications. The committee is made up of not just of Main Street board members, but a couple of, well, 3 or 4 community members, one of whom is usually someone from your planning department, somebody from the historic district. We rotate that out. But that grant committee then scores all the applications against what we have established for the criteria that Oregon Main Street's gonna look at. Good projects that win these awards are in a sweet spot of the owner is on board. There's already plans kind of in place for what they want to do with the building and why they need the $200,000. And that it is going to match the priorities of our district, of our downtown, of our Main Street. So we know that those things are how they evaluate it. So we score them out and we decide. Then the application, we do a whole lot of work. It's a huge application, like 30 pages by the time we're done with it. It's historic stuff. It's analysis about what it'll do to the district. Plans, narrative. It's not an easy application. We send that off. It takes a lot of hours of our board member and building owner time to craft it. We send it off and we wait and see what the response is. Oregon Main Street then comes back to us. The other point I want to make about this grant is it's also a reimbursement grant. So yes, it's $200,000, but at no point on any of these grant awards does Main Street get cut a check for $200,000. Never. We also, no point do our building owners get cut a check for $200,000. What happens is that we apply for it, they go do work in some chunk, usually kind of predetermined, that matches what they said they were going to do. They tell us that they've got a chunk done. They present all the receipts to us. We submit a report to Oregon Main Street with all that documentation. They check it through at least 2 different people and then the money comes to Main Street and then the money goes out to the property owner. The other part of this is there's got to be a 30% match on the part of the property owner. So they're getting $200,000, but they're also spending or documenting that there's at least another $60,000 that's being spent. So for instance, with the Columbia Theater, over the course of their $200,000 grant, they spent close to $61,000 in their own funds and volunteer time to make that project happen. With the Klondike, he's only spent about $50,000 of his $200,000 grant, and he's already documented about $10,000 in his own expenses on just that grant portion. Crooked Creek has received about $114,000 to date, but spent about $30,000 of his own, in addition to the money that he's also fronting for each chunk, which is not insignificant. Then the Holton Hollow property, about $107,000 have been paid out, and about $70,000 documented being spent. So we have matching funds to date on these projects beyond what the award is coming from Oregon Main Street. We have property owners spending $170,000 within the historic district, their own funds.
How long do they have to use it? And
They have, well, for instance, Crooked Creek and Holton Hollow, they were ready to go and they're probably gonna get finished before Klondike. Klondike won theirs in spring of 2022. He needs to complete that portion of the work by end of April 25. Okay? So we've got some time left, but yeah, there's gonna be some hot buttons.
It's great that you're explaining all this out, very detailed too. And so is it required that they have that 30% as they go?
It has kind of shifted over time as I've learned more about how we do our reporting.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we're taking chunks, so each reimbursement is, we try to hit about that 30% chunk. In some cases, we can't quite do that. We really try to honor the cash flow needs of the project as well. The other piece, one of the other details is we get down to a last 10%, and Oregon Main Street holds that last 10% until 10%, yeah, 10%. Yeah, 10% until they get kind of final completion sign off on the project. So in the case of the theater, we had to get that occupancy before the end of April. That was kind of the game. So
tracks all that.
we do. I mean, that's it.
Time consuming.
It's on. Yeah, it is. As a matter of fact, it is.
I was like, who's doing
As a matter of fact, it is.
Limiting and.
Next slide. This is super tiny and you can't see it, but maybe you can. I wanted to show you what our 2023 numbers were. And a lot of it, I think if you see grant income and then on the next page, it will say grant expenses. Those are the same numbers. We had $264,000 pass through our organization into the community last year in the form of grant money. Next slide. So our net revenue, not a whole lot, $16,000. If you go back and you look at these slides later, you can see exactly what our operating costs were for last year. We are fairly lean. We are fairly cheap for the amount of money that we're bringing into the community. But we did close 2023 with assets of about $30,000. You're going to probably figure out where that $30,000 came from in just a minute. Next slide. Okay. So I do want to give a refresher about why are we in partnership together. In August of 2020, one of the requirements for all Main Street organizations is you do have to be assessed by the Oregon Main Street organization. And as I've kind of been able to read between the lines, there has been growing kind of systemization of what the requirements are, but also what the tools are for Main Street communities to up-level and do better and professionalize themselves. So there was a report written from Oregon Main Street in August of 2020, and it came back with some pretty pretty significant suggestions about what Shedco at that point needed to do. You remember back to the 4-point picture, and the idea of we have to have a balanced approach. Part of what had happened for one reason or another is Shedco at that point had really kind of become all about promotions, all about events. And some of the other pieces weren't quite as filled out in terms of the functionality of the organization. And that's, no fault of Shedco board members at all. I think they were doing a great job. They were really trying to do what they could. But just also because of the nature of things, there was a fair amount of conflict with the city and, what are city events? What are Shedco events? How do they coexist? I wasn't here. I have no idea, but this is kind of
Very controversial. Right?
reading between the lines. And so
You're safe to say that. Yeah.
Oregon Main Street was really suggested that we take a number of steps in order to keep our status as a Main Street organization. So one of it was reorganizing, new bylaws, rejuvenate the board with a lot of new board members, get back to that 4-point balanced approach, go back to basics, kind of start over at scratch. And at the same time, they really asked that there be an MOU with the city. Like, look, city and Main Street have got to work together. There's got to be a partnership there. So what we developed as the MOU between the city and Main Street, formerly Shedco, is about annual support from the city for staffing, insurance, space lease, and conference attendance. Conference attendance may sound frivolous, but it's actually a requirement for our executive director or some staff member to have a presence at the every other year Oregon Main Street Conference and then the 4 network meetings that happen also. So staffing and what this essentially amounted to was $30,000 was promised for staffing and and then in addition to that, kind of reimbursement for our basic insurance, our organizational insurance, our space lease, and that conference attendance. We have done a beautiful job, I think, keeping our costs low in terms of our rent. We actually sublet from another nonprofit right up in Holton on Columbia Boulevard. So we're in the Life Empowered Administrative Building, and that serves our purposes lovely. We did discover that we actually can't hire a full-time executive director for $30,000. We can't even legally do it to have a salaried employee in Oregon for less than $36,000. And then you add on top, and that's the other thing. We did have an executive director for about a year, Amara. Most of you met her, knew her. She left us last August. We then have had an interim director for about 4 months, and we're now without a director, and the board members are filling in. With the plan, we are on a hunt for a new ED, but a lot of our discussion is about what is that executive director going to look like and how do we fund it? So let's see.
I want to emphasize that the 4-point approach is virtually impossible. I've been sitting in on these meetings without a director there to kind of help guide and direct things. Each and every member has somewhere on a committee, 2 committees of that 4-point approach, and very active right now because there is no director.
And needs to be. And I think we all have some philosophy about really what the role of that executive director is supposed to be. My latest metaphor is the executive director needs to be the ringmaster on the circus, and board member, the other committees are the rings of the circus, and they should be run by committees. We don't expect our ED to do the work of the committees or do the work of the programming. And so in that respect, it is a little bit different than other nonprofits because we really have to stay mission driven by our volunteers because that is the point of this organization is community engagement. Could we do next slide? So again, why are we partners? Main Street has the ability to show up and help the city meet your goals. Riverfront Connector Plan goal about improving the aesthetics and the function of the corridors to attract business and investment. Strategic Work Plan goal, Area 4 for economic development. The Urban Renewal Agency goal 5. I hope you see in just this short presentation that we have really leaned into our role of assisting with economic development in ways that a city can't quite. Number one, Oregon Main Street revitalization grants are only available to Main Street organizations. That's not something the city could apply for. But we really look at, we have an opportunity to assist the city in ways adjacent to city goals that serves our district and moves all of it forward for the good of the city. Let's see. Oh, I have one more slide, one more. I wanted to throw up some of the names of our significant volunteers and board members, really, since 2022. All of 2022, all of 2023, we've really only had 2 solid years. These are folks that have contributed at least 15 to 20 hours at minimum on any one project. Some of them are contributing close to 15 hours a month, depending on whether it's reporting season. Some of us are doing more than that. You'll note that I have a very specific number up there, about 923 volunteer hours logged in 2023. We know that because we have to report to Oregon Main Street quarterly. That's just what we've captured. That's just what people are actually remembering to report to us. So we are capturing all kinds of data each quarter. We are reporting on how many businesses are opening, how many businesses are closing, how many vacant storefronts are there, whatever else, because Oregon Main Street aggregates that data from all the different main streets to help them create strategic ideas for what we need statewide. But the other point of this slide is I do want to say that we are volunteer run even when we have an executive director in place. And these are all human beings who are showing up again and again, despite all the human things that happen to us, whether that is a catastrophic house fire, major medical issues, deaths of loved ones, new careers, loss of jobs. All these things have happened to our board members in the last couple of years, and we're still showing up and we're still contributing a significant amount of our free time to do this work. And why? Because we believe in it and we love this city. So what do we need from you? We really want your continued support. And also, we really need volunteers from the community. We have been doing the work in the last 2 years to establish our new foundation. And I think you're going to start seeing us a lot more active in the community this year, which will be welcome, but we could use the extra assistance, the extra volunteers and bodies. So what questions do you have for me or for my board members who are in the room? Oh, last slide. That's how you can get a hold of us. And I do want to invite you. The Main Street America site is amazing, and the Oregon Main Street site is really like a lot of kind of resident on state websites. It's a little clunky, but the wealth of information, if you start digging, it's all there. Anyone, Brady Preheim, can dig around on the Oregon Main Street site and find all kinds of great documents and supporting ideas and materials for what this Main Street approach is about. Okay.
I want to chime in and just say I thank you guys all for your dedication. I truly believe that if you put positive energy into things, positive will come out. It works a lot better than negative energy. So I appreciate you guys doing that, and your commitment to the city is amazing, and I'm super happy with everything you guys have done. So shout out to you first on that. I did hear that you say you were collecting a lot of data, so maybe at the next presentation or at some point, we can see some of the data about storefronts that have, you know, what's increased and what's changed with some of
Sooner than
the.
later, it's our joint meeting. So-
Would you like to see us next week?
I know you guys are really busy, but I'm just saying, like, since you're collecting that
On
data.
the agenda. Just showing up. Oh, we got some information about.
Oh, okay, well, there you go, look at that.
So, it's been a week.
I think that would be really cool to see that and.
No, I appreciate that. And I think indeed, that's one of the things we can provide.
You don't tell us anything. You
Well,
come back
no,
from
we just
experience.
did
so
this.
much to tell.
She just did this. I got a call from, Jennifer Pugsley and Aaron, and it was like, okay, I'll give Jacob a info and giddy up. Yeah.
Really happy, you guys are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, love you guys.
Anything else?
One question I had, Aaron, what are some of the hurdles for your organization to reach the next tier at this point?
Well, the number one thing honestly is it's this dance about how can we have enough funds to hire an executive director who will then also simultaneously help us create a more sustainable funding stream. We really need to hire an executive director at about the tune of $65,000 a year. With or without benefits. That's a huge step up from 36. You know, that, and I don't dare ask you for more money. I'm really, at minimum, please just maintain the funding levels that we have. The MOU does say you can go above $30,000 if you should so choose. But really, that's the biggest hurdle. What we're doing now with the board is not sustainable. The uncertainty we have about our funding, particularly given what's going on with the city, I mean, we don't have our head in the sand. You know, we're paying attention. And we're incredibly sensitive to the pressure you're all under to do right by a lot of different organizations and departments. But that is going to be a huge piece for us. We're kind of in a zone where I think that we can incredibly diversify our funding stream and stable. In fact, we're meeting with the Oregon Main Street Executive Director is coming to St. Helens this Sunday to do a board retreat, about 6 hours of work with our current board. And we're really honing in on that issue of sustainability and funding. And also I'm gonna make her go around to all of our 4 projects. So anyway, but again, that I would say that's what it is right now. The passion is there. Our cultural understanding of what a Main Street organization is definitely up level. Like, I can't tell you how clueless I was when I walked into that first meeting in July of 21. I truly had no idea. And now it's just culturally, there's so many of our board members who are getting it and understanding that this is much bigger than just showing up at a board meeting, not thinking about it for a moment.
And the support for the retreats too is huge. You know how it is when you go to a retreat, even us, we meet, collaborate with
Yeah.
other counselors, mayors. I think that is, I mean, you don't know what you don't know until you get there and you show up. You're like, oh my God, I brought back all this information. That's what I've noticed, you know, on the board is the information that comes back from the people going to. the
That's why those conferences are so important. It's like continuing education.
So, I mean, again, that's another piece of financial support there that's needed. So I just want to recap though, 800,000 in the last 3 years that has come from Oregon Main Street into our.
Just for the revitalization grants, we do have brought some other money again.
That's right, you have other little things also, so that would be 30% on top of that. Would be about a little over $1 million right there. When you add 30% to $800,000, so.
And I
$1 million.
think over the last 3 years, what the city has contributed is a little bit, you know, 90,000. Well, yeah, $90,000 plus a little extra, so maybe $100,000. And we have offered that kind of return. You know, and it may sound trite, but one of the things when I watched your urban renewal agency meeting, it struck me that what our projects are doing at very base level, we are increasing assessed value on all of those properties. The you know, the Holton Hollow property up on
That's absolutely
Columbia Boulevard,
correct.
that was a vacant lot for the entire life of the city. And it's gonna be assessed at considerably more than a vacant lot in the months
You
and
think?
years to come. So, you know, one of the things that happens with Main Streets is we do have to figure out how we partner with cities, how we survive. And I would be interested in sharing with you at some point some of the data about how other Oregon Main Streets do that dance. Some of them work through economic improvement district kind of arrangements. Some of them were, you know, almost all of them get significant funding. I think the average is about 40% of their operating costs come from their city or their county government. TLT money, events, those are kind of avenues that some organizations do. We don't mix in that for maybe clear reasons in this city. But we will have to create some of our own event revenue stream moving forward in order to balance out what it is we do. But yeah, I mean, we are trying to solve this puzzle.
Well, I know for myself, I'm about return on investment and, you know, hearing that our 90,000 in 3 years, because that's what it's been roughly, close enough. Even if it's 100.
I was gonna say, let's round up.
100, let's round up to 100. We've got $1 million in revenue just in grants and the 30%, and it's beyond that because we know that Holton building is gonna be a lot more expensive than
And
$100,000.
that Crooked Creek building, and if we can execute on the
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean, when it comes,
yeah, we did get the I don't think it got pointed out enough. We were the ones that applied for the Travel Oregon grant that.
I can't stress enough how important it is going into the budget meeting to have that in the back of your mind, because you're gonna have so many numbers coming at you. And you're gonna have a lot of departments, and you're gonna have, but just remember this, because it's a little ways away from the budget meetings in April.
Anyway.
Good.
Thank you. I do want to say we are absolutely open to conversation anytime. I think yeah.
I gotta just say, I'm impressed, because I used to sit on the old shed co too, and they did everything they could with the amount of volunteers they had. Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that you had to say, but it's really taking the mission statements to heart, the 4-point approach. Every agenda has that on it, a check-in with what's going on, so it's very impressive, and yeah, I'm glad to sit in and listen to what's going on, and look forward to seeing you guys next week, because I know what's coming and you guys will be pleasantly surprised.
I actually will not, but I will go back and watch the video.
Okay. So they've done a lot of work. Okay. Come on up. We'll go on to our next item is a library department semi-annual report. Library director Suzanne Bishop.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for the opportunity. Every 6 months, we've always got so many wonderful things to share. Go to the next slide, please, Kathy. So here's the strategic plan. These are our 3 goals. We've talked about the strategic plan at presented about that a few months ago. I have all these things written down to say about it, but when I listened to Diana Weiner talk about her life experience in the library, I want to say that her experience is a beautiful illustration of all the ways that the library,
100%.
that the public library impacts, and that our library has impacted her life and the lives of so many people that live here and visit the county. The photograph of the woman sitting there, she's brand new to our community. She came to the library because she needed a space to work in. She needed a place to read and watch, stream and do all kinds of other things that she doesn't have access to anywhere else. So she's at the library, kind of settling into St. Helens. The other illustration there is one of our newest partnerships with Grow Oregon. Thank you, Erin. We have a $2,000 grant that we're using to create a small business resources area separate in the library. We'll have all of our small business and entrepreneurial resources there. The grant from Grow has allowed us to buy about 60 books and also to purchase use of or subscribe to a giant database of hundreds of magazines, many of which are business and entrepreneur related materials. So we're very pleased with that. We're partnering with Grow Oregon, with SBDC, CCET, economic team is also working with us on that. So, look for more to come. We'll do a little opening with SBDC sometime later this month, I think, or early in April. Thank you. So how do we serve our community? I wanted to read read a quote from an I Love My Librarian Award. The American Library Association invites people to nominate librarians to show appreciation for the work they did. And Brenda Heron Kanega, our reference librarian, was honored. A family that had just moved to the community wrote a beautiful statement and nomination, and I just want to read a little bit of it. When we walked through the door, we were met with a warm and welcoming Mr. Dan Dieter, who's one of our library assistants, who ushered us in and made us feel as if we were at home. He helped us to register for a library card, and we began making daily visits. It wasn't long after that we met amazing reference librarian, Mrs. Brenda Heron Kanega. A library is more than a place for books, a welcoming space for me and my children, a place where we can relax and feel supported, a place where my children are able to find themselves in books and can feel seen and understood. And then they finished by saying, Brenda has also been especially helpful to my wife, who has been struggling to find material to lesson plan for homeschooling, came into the library one day to a pile of books and educational games that Brenda had set aside for her to look at. The public library is one of the United States' greatest institutions. It's not the books that are warehoused inside, but the hearts and the minds of the librarians. So, and Brenda was very generous in saying that it really is a group effort. You know, all of the library assistants, I think every single one of us has touched that family in some way and helped them. It's been a really beautiful group effort. So, Reader's Advisory, we help people find books. Early literacy, I'm going to talk about a little bit later and what that really means. That's one of our, you know, that's library jargon, but what does that really represent? In-depth research, you know, somebody comes to us with a question about their family history, for example, or they're looking for some information about car repair. We have a reference librarian, Brenda, that can help them find that, do that in-depth research for them. Lots of kids coming in with homework help, needing homework help. We help folks with employment and business, and we'll talk a little bit about our public computers and how people are engaging in that and getting the information. And then community outreach, we have partnered and continue to partner with a growing list of organizations that we're very pleased to help and that can help us reach out to folks. So open hours and visits, there's a lot of data here. I just want to point out a couple of things. Visits, you'll see this 2023 partial number here, 20,506. That that'll be over 32,000 probably by the end of the fiscal year. We always have an uptick at the end of the school year, so we'll see that, as well as just you'll see that where people are really coming back from COVID. It's baby steps. There's another COVID upsurge going on, and we can really see people. You know, we don't see as many people coming in the door when that's happening. And then visits per capita, we've been averaging about 2.6. So, you know, imagine that every member of the community comes in 2.5 times a year. That's a lot of visits, And I want to talk a little bit about hours. So what are our mornings for? Our mornings, we see job seekers, retirees coming in to read the paper. We have, of course, young families and their caregivers coming for programs to pick out books because, oh my gosh, it's almost nap time and we need to go somewhere for an hour and just hang out and enjoy whatever the library has to offer, choosing stuff. After school, we have middle and high school age kids. We've had a group of kids in the hallway that set up some tables and do some studying together and hang out together, do a little streaming. We have a little pack of 3 boys that come in, 3 brothers that come in almost every day after school and do their homework. We help them with various things, finding stuff. They've gotten really excited about the Library of Things, and their mom comes in and helps them check out Library of Things once a week or so. And then in the evenings, you know, we have job seekers, homework folks, lots of people using the public computers for everything from right now, tax forms are a really big thing, you know, applying for jobs. You can't apply for a job with paper anymore. You have to do it online. So people are using that. Building use. 37,000, almost 37,400 visits in FY 2023. That's bodies in and out of, in the door, into the building, using the whole Columbia Center. You'll see our building hours here, a little longer than the hours that the library is open. We open as soon as we can in the morning, and we have folks that are waiting on the porch. We have some regular visitors who are sleeping rough that need a place to warm up, starting as early as we open in the morning. And then library hours, one of the other things that I think surprises people is we have Wi-Fi that's available, like many city buildings, in the parking lot. Some people say you can get it all the way out into some parts of McCormick Park. We have people parked every morning and in the evenings doing homework, doing work, streaming a video, hanging out, whatever it is, they have access to that information and to our website. And then, auditorium and Armstrong Room, again, that use is ticking up. A couple of things I thought I'd point out. We have a Girl Scout troop that meets every week there. We have HOA meetings. CCMH recently did some training using the auditorium. And then we have Columbia County Economic Team uses it for work and, for meetings and such. So wide variety of uses for those spaces. Lots and lots of people coming and going in that Columbia Center. So we own 42,000 plus items, or you own, I should say, the community owns that many items in our library. That includes a little bit over 200 library of things, which honestly, when we tell people when they're getting their library card that we have an air fryer and a telescope and a moisture meter and mobile hotspots, their eyes just light up. And I will say, to go back to Wi-Fi access, we have a lot of families that come in and borrow those mobile hotspots so they can do their homework from home. And they can do other kinds of work-related things as well. Cultural passes, every day somebody's coming in to borrow a pass to go to Pittock Mansion for free, or to go to the Evergreen Aviation Museum or the Portland Art Museum. And then 65,000 times items have been borrowed from were borrowed from our library just last year. I wanted to talk about what has to happen behind the scenes to make one of those items available to the library or to our citizens, to our users, our patrons. So it's a book. First of all, it has to be selected. That means we have our professional staff. They're trained to do this sort of work. They're trained to use not only reviews and other information in our field to collect the titles, but also they're using their knowledge of our community. They're using knowledge of the field or the topic, and they're using their knowledge of the collection. How does that item fit into our library, the resources that we offer? And then, all right, so we've chosen those items. They have to be purchased, of course, then they're cataloged. To be cataloged, a person, Nicole, our cataloger, has to sit with that item. It has to be labeled. It has to be entered into our catalog so that when you go onto our website and look for an item, it shows up. If you give us a title, if you give us the author's name, all of those things. Then it has to be wrapped and prepared. Our volunteers, we're very grateful for them. Every single one of those books has to have some kind of cover on it, stickers on it, prepared for the shelves. Then it's shelved. People borrow it. Well, how do they find it? Sometimes they find it in the catalog. Often they can't find it because they come and ask us. They're looking for an author that has cozy mysteries, kind of like MC Beaton, that somebody can come up to the desk they have recently and said, what other authors do you have? We have a staff member that can say, oh, yeah, these are popular in our library, or I can do some research on that and figure out what other authors you might enjoy. The items are checked out, they're shelved again. All of that, of course, takes staff time. And then as the collection ages, our library collection development staff, our experts, are looking always at all of the items in our collection for age. How current are they? Are they still relevant? Is the information still accurate? How much has it been used? If it's a picture book, is it on its last legs? Do we need to figure out if we need a replacement for Chicka Chicka Boom Boom because the pages are starting to rip and it's getting old? So all of that behind the scenes stuff are just one of those 42,000 items. And of course, we've done that for every single one of those 42,000 items in the library. We collect about 500 new items a year, so that's keeping us busy. So database use, thank you. So these are our main go-to databases. All of these are available, accessible online from home or from work, wherever you are, as long as you have a library card. Ancestry.com, very popular. This is the number of hits, if you will, or uses for each of these items in the last fiscal year. Freegal is our music streaming service, gets a lot of love. Audiobooks and ebooks, more and more people are using their tablets or their computers or their phones to read or to listen to music or as they're driving down the road, as I do, listening to a mystery to and from work. All of those things are available to folks for free. And then our Gale suite of resources, we have homework help, we have potential employment opportunities information, help for people brushing up on their skills, finding out information about their recent diagnosis of theirs or a loved one. And then A to Z recipes, Educate Station, which is a great resource for homeschooling families in particular, use that, and then Medici TV, which is international films. So youth services, I said I was going to talk about early literacy, and I just want to clarify that early literacy, yes, it's about learning to use books. Yes, it's about learning to read, but it is so much more than that. It is learning skills like fine motor skills, holding a book. What's the sequence of turning a page? What's the sequence of a story? What's the sequence of language? How does expanding our vocabulary? Telling a story, what is it like to experience telling a story? All of those things you can do at home, and all of those things we teach you how to do, and we guide you with our youth librarian and with the expertise, professional expertise that we have in our buildings. We also do some fun stuff, Lego free play, that you could say that that's good for fine motor skills as well, and it's also a great way to build community with our kiddos and our families. The homeschool meetup is a response to families that asked us to give them an opportunity to get together. They share information. Erin does a story time, and they do a craft, and then the kids have time to just hang out with each other. And then STEAM Zone is a new program. We do that in our makerspace. Erin does a program once a month. Pretty cool things from building structures using marshmallows and what are those called? Toothpicks. I'll show you that in a minute. And then we did some fun with winter break. You can see some kiddos holding their sock snowmen. And then Erin's out in the community, often doing programs with preschoolers and other folks. And then we do some special programs as well. That photo on the right is a craft, our preschoolers doing craft after one of their regular story times. I hope I'm not embarrassing you, Counselor Sundin. That's a picture of him making his giving a wonderful presentation about World War II at Christmas time, which was, as you can see, he packed the house. There were 84 seats, people in seats, and a few other people hoping that they could find a spot. So lots of adult programs. We were very happy to partner with the Museum Association to present that program. We do a monthly book club. We have an adults and crafts program. Coming up is Peep Show. If you're interested in doing a little diorama with peeps, there are still some slots in the program next Tuesday. And then we're also inviting the community to participate by bringing your own dioramas in, and we're going to display those in the library or in the building lobby. Thank you. Makerspace, we've been really challenged. We don't have a makerspace tech, so we're doing our best to fill that space with special programs. Our full-time staff are now spending a couple of hours a week in the space. We're boning up on using those materials. We're inviting people the equipment. We're inviting people to come in. We're doing some special programming. We've got a beginning knitting class coming up next week. Our plan is to continue to provide more robust services. We've been talking to the Quilters Guild about teaching some quilting classes, construction, talking to some folks about small business resources kinds of things, doing your own podcast. We're just trying to expand the offerings using volunteers and working with our own staff to the extent that we can. So more to come. We're working hard to try to make that space available again to the community. Rivers of Wonder, I mentioned this, it was upcoming the last time I was here. We had 80+ attendees from all over the world. We had somebody from Sydney, Australia that came, participated, if you will, via Zoom. We had somebody from Idaho who said she was gonna Zoom and ended up coming. She was so excited about it. So lots of hands-on sessions. It was a great opportunity for some local historians to share their knowledge about the local history, help people make those connections with their own family history, and just learn some basic skills about how to do your own genealogical research. And that ties nicely into our bi-monthly genealogy group, which meets with Brenda once a month, or excuse me, every other month at the library. A very popular program as well. And partnering with our community, I mentioned before, that top left photo is the Elks Club. They did this really wonderful program at the library. We provided story times and they gave out hats, coats, and mittens to kiddos that are participating in the Head Start program. I think they said they gave out about 80 coats. We saw a whole big old pile of kids coming in and out of the library. One of the other parts of that was to encourage families to use the library, to get to know the library, to get cards. And we did have folks that left the library with cards in hand and books and DVDs and all kinds of cool stuff. And the other photograph just illustrates one of the other ways we're out in the community. That was Trunk or Treat. Those kiddos and their families sure kept us running for a couple of hours there. It's fun to get out there and hear how people connect with the library and what they're looking for, what they wish they could do, we could do. Here's who we are. There are 6 of us, or excuse me, there's 6 FTEs, there's 8 of us actually at the library. Our 4 library assistants are the folks that you see when you walk in the door. They are some of the warmest, most professional and capable people I've ever worked with, truly. They're this whole group, all of us are an amazing staff, but they really shine. They're the reason that people feel welcome when they walk in the building and know that they can be relied on. We can be relied on to help them with accurate information or get them to the right person. And our volunteers. We are so grateful for them. We just did some research. It turns out the value of a volunteer hour at a public library is $32.27. That would be if it was an employee that was fully loaded. We've benefited up to the tune of about $16,000 or more this year in volunteer time. We have 19 active volunteers. 2 of them are in this photo here. They've logged 504 hours. And I mentioned earlier preparing items for the shelf. They do a lot of that. They also do the shelving, their book repair, they're reviewing materials constantly. And there are a lot of other smaller tasks that folks do. We have volunteers that come here for lots of different reasons. They're retired, they're really dedicated to library service. They are looking for an opportunity. We have younger folks that come in who are maybe between high school and college or in college or trying to decide what to do. So lots of different ages and people that come for different reasons, all of whom we're very grateful for. And we love our library board. We have new chair, Jana Mann, and vice chair, Aaron Martin, in June. We are still waiting eagerly for a new appointment for that vacant slot. That should happen at the coming board meeting. They're wonderful advocates for us in the community. And we're very grateful for their time. And Friends of the Library, their May book sales coming up, big book sale in the first weekend of May. Those shelves there show you books that are always for sale. You walk past them every time you walk into the library. That earns for the Friends between $120 and $220 a month. Just in book sales, those books are 50 cents to $1.50. I mean, so there are a lot of people coming and going and grabbing those books. All of the money that the Friends donates to that the Friends are given or that have come to the library. Ultimately, they help pay for Summer Library Challenge programs. They help pay for our book club books, so that we have them to share with our book club members. They help support, substantial support for the genealogy conference and lots of other ways. Their volunteer time is really valued and valuable to the library.
So if somebody has a bunch of books laying around, can they call the friends of the book, of the library, and they will come grab them or meet them?
They can bring them to the library.
Okay.
Yep, and so the process when someone donates a book is threefold, if you will. The books come to us, we look at them. There may be books that we can add to our collection. Again, we make the decision based on condition, on whether it's appropriate for our collection. You know, maybe it fills a hole, maybe we need it because it's a new book that we have people asking for. If it's not, if it doesn't meet those criteria, then it goes to the friends. They sell the books, both in that bookshelf and then at their book sales as well. So yeah, it comes to the library first.
No.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and then thank you. Thanks to your support, thanks to your leadership. We really appreciate how you support the library. And I just want to speak for all of us in saying that it is a real privilege to serve our community and that you will not meet a more dedicated group of really fine public servants than the people that work at the library. So thank you.
I hope we answered them all.
Kind of too much
I
talking.
had one, ma'am, what changes have you seen since removing the late fees?
Oh, interesting question.
I just remembered that, so I was wanting to follow up with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, from the budget committee. Yep. It used to be, I think the most it ever was in income was about $1,200. What we've seen is increase in people coming back to the library. People are coming back to the library. They often the people that don't come back if they have fees and fines are people or fines, excuse me, are people that, you know, can't afford to come back if they have to pay that overdue fine. Now, if you do lose or damage an item, then you are expected to pay for that, to pay to replace it.
Have you seen books being out extended periods of time now that there's not a late fee? Have you had problems with that?
We instituted automatic renewals at the same time, so it's hard for me to gauge that. I could get back to you with that information, but
Just curious.
yeah.
You know, everything has a cause and effect, right? So.
Mhm. Yeah, you know, nationally, the trend is not for, it's for fewer people to have that problem, I guess. You know, and maybe, and it's partly because of the automatic renewals, but it's partly because, you know, everybody has the opportunity to bring, if it's a couple of days late, they'll still bring it in. They're not gonna hold it and hope that they've got the money at the end of the month, and then it's building up, and next thing you know, they owe $15 and they don't have it, and so we see more items coming back for sure. I don't know about the length of time that they're borrowed.
Well, so what do you do with a book like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom that gets worn out? And who makes that call and you just bite the bullet and pull it out of the budget to get a new book?
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. So Erin is our collection development specialist for children's collections. So when a book comes in, every time a book comes into the library, somebody looks it over, make sure that the condition is acceptable. When it's starting to, you know, look bad or there's a big tear or something, it goes to Erin. Erin will take a look at how it's circulated, how often it's used. They'll look at whether or not they're using it for their programs, even if it's not circulating, maybe they're using it for programs. They'll look at its condition. Maybe we can tape it up and put it back on the shelf. If all of those questions have been answered and it looks like something that we need to add or return to the collection, then we'll buy another copy, and that comes out of our regular collection development budget, our print budget.
Okay, and then you think there's any, I know we're always looking, but any room in the any hope in the near future of getting that makerspace grant for that again?
Recently applied to for a $50,000 grant from the State Library of Oregon. It's incredibly competitive. Most of those funds go to project-based things like there was an academic library got funds to digitize one particular item. There's a bookmobile at another library. So I'm hopeful, but that's to the extent that we can. That's as far as we That's what I've been able to find up till now. So I don't know, I'm always hopeful.
Yes. Did we originally get the grant through the STEM program?
ARPA, we got some upfront money from ARPA. Yeah, it's,
STEM part of that at all though?
Wasn't there funding previous
Yeah,
to,
big
yeah,
thing.
that's what I thought
Yeah.
too, previous to the ARPA funds.
Yeah, I think it was the STEM program. Yeah. Okay, any other questions for Suzanne? Thank you so much.
thank you very much.
Remember it because it was when I first came on and then ARPA funds came to kind of make.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is update on South First Street and St. Helens Street intersection project, Public Works Director, which that's actually Sharon.
Oh, it's not here.
Our engineering manager, Sharon Drew, and
As he is.
Bigger than him.
So I wanted to give you a quick update on the intersection, the person St. Helens intersection, so go to the next slide. It'll just be like 10 minutes. So a quick timeline on the project, because I know there's been a kind of lot of confusion about it, so I wanted to clarify some things here. So in September 2022, we signed a contract with Moore Excavating to do those improvements at the intersection. And specifically, the work that they were contracted to do was to do storm drainage work, general excavation, planter curbs, asphalt, sidewalk, the lights, bikes, benches, bike racks, benches, and landscaping. So after they started, of course, there was some discussion that we wanted to underground the utilities there, especially because we wanted to do that gateway. And, you know, it wouldn't look very good with all those power lines and whatnot. So our first attempt to secure a contractor, electrical contractor to do that work was in November 2022. We put out an RFP for electrical contractors to actually come in and give us a proposal to do that work, not just at the intersection, but the entire project, including the big one on the waterfront. We got one proposal from Moore Excavating. We looked at it, the proposal selection committee, it was very vague. It didn't have a cost to it, an estimate, and so we basically rejected that proposal. It would have been really bad business to execute a contract when you don't even know what you're signing. So we went back to the drawing board. We had Kittleson kind of dive more into that project for the joint utility at the intersection. And so we did some work there, and then we got some plans from them. We put those out for bid, public bid in July of last year. We got no bids. So, and a lot of it is just because the electrical work is so specialized, it's really difficult to get someone to do it. So in December, Mohammed and I came here and asked for that emergency procurement resolution, which we're grateful that you guys did. So we were able to, next slide. So January, we solicited 4 contractors for bids on the project, and we received 2 bids on February 22nd. So next slide. So this was our engineer's estimate for and this is just for the joint utility and the undergrounding of the electrical services at the intersection. So it doesn't include more
A
excavation.
total separate project.
Yeah, so it's basically now 2 separate projects. Yeah, so this.
Because of the complexity of the electricity and stuff, right?
Exactly, yeah, and because Moore is under contract to do that other work, so we can't take that away from them, but since the joint utility and the services was not part of their contract, we decided, and it was so much, you can't do a change order for that much, for state law, so we had to go out for bid.
And I think a huge explanation is you don't want to go through and have more do all the work and then have to tear up to get undergrounding underneath work that's already done.
Exactly.
So
It'd be more
it's
expensive.
like, okay, hold on, that's why.
That explains why
That's
there
the
was a
gap.
pause
That's
there.
the gap.
Yeah.
So that's the gap, is
I
that,
want to make sure it's very clear.
yeah.
He's not out of money, this is, you know, I've heard all kinds of rumors.
Yeah, we have to do this first. It would be an absolute waste of money to have them be like, oh yeah, go ahead and do this. And they've been really great, you know, it has been a delay on them, but they they want to do this work right for us. And so they've been really good in holding off on their work until we get this stuff done.
Yeah.
So the next slide, we got, so we solicited bids from Moore Excavation, from TFT Construction, who's based in Scappoose, Landis and Landis, and Advanced Excavating Specialists. All of these contractors have worked here before. TFT, they just finished the Columbia Boulevard sidewalk between Gable and Sykes. Landis and Landis, they were the prime contractor when we did all that sewer rehab between 2012 and 2015. And Advanced Excavating, they just did some recent work for us on a water line replacement and then the emergency sewer repair on Deer Island. So in the end, TFT and Advanced Excavating did not submit any bids, and so we got 2 bids. And you can see the prices here, quite a difference. So Moore Excavating, their bid came in at 788,000 above that, and TFT 454. So and I put up here kind of like a anticipated timeline of the intersection. And I've got some asterisks there because a lot of it is going to depend on how soon Landis can finish their work and have more come in. And so Landis and Landis, they are ready to go. They want to start next week. So of course, we have to get the contract and stuff, but we've already started. We met with them yesterday, talked about the traffic control and how we're gonna arrange all that and have more move their stuff out and Landis come in and get theirs in. And I've worked with them before. They're one of the best in the state. I'll tell you that right now. I've worked with them before, excellent to work with. So they're ready to go. Our contract substantial completion is June. So we're hoping, I put August because that's kind of their end date for their contract, so they technically have until that time. I don't think they will go that far. I think that they'll be done by May, actually, by May or June. So as soon as they're done, then MEI is gonna come in and do all that hardscape and get all that other stuff done. And so we anticipate that the intersection will be fully open and complete before the end of the year.
Should be able to happen with kind of not disrupting the intersection too much, or no? That's all part of the completion.
That would be part of the completion. So when MEI comes in, that'll be part of the completion. The only asterisk there is that once MEI is done, the poles will probably have to stay until Comcast, Lumen, and PUD. Well, because we're gonna do PUD. So Comcast and Lumen and probably LS Networks.
Wire. Basically
Pull their wires,
Yes.
get their services off, and then we can pull those poles and then kind of finish up. But we're pushing really hard on those utility companies to be a little bit more proactive. And that's it. So just quick little update. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns on it.
I appreciate the explanation. I mean, the timeline, it's never gonna be a convenient time to take down a very important intersection. But the explanation really, helps make sense of it. So thank you guys.
If you don't mind if I speak to, why are we undergrounding the power? That's a question that needs to be answered. And part of that was, the project goals of creating a unified waterfront development where the new and the old can work together. So you don't have a hard stop where it's all above ground power and all poles and lights, and then you get into this streetscape. And so it's a way to take what's going to happen in the new as far as the pole bounce, street furniture, landscaping, and kind of bring it up the street, underground power, and have it all one uniform look and tie together really nicely so that it looks like it was never there in the future. So, and this delay has been really inconvenient, but if you look at the dollars that we're potentially saving here,
It's significantly, yeah, it's very significant, yeah.
Go.
That's all we got.
All right, thank you.
Guys.
Okay, let's go ahead and do our next item, which is proposed police station Luba status. Jacob Gretchen.
Yeah, thank you. So really, the main thing for bringing this up is to understand what the council wants to do with the Luba case. And part of that is reminding you of the status and where we're at. So of course, you know, it was appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals. That was back in December. We had an executive session where we talked about that. After that, at the end of December, the city's legal counsel filed a notice of withdrawal to LUBA. Now, if these terms were gonna be more common speak, it would be a notice to pause the process and potentially amend the decision if we want to, but of course, that's too wordy. So it doesn't mean that it's
That's what it would be.
officially withdrawn. It means that you have 90 days to potentially reconsider if you want. There's nothing that says you have to. And you could potentially just pull the plug in that 90 days as well. And if I remember right back then, it was kind of like, well, let's kind of see how things shake up, have some time. But now that time is coming up at the end of March. The 90-day mark is March 27th. So we have this meeting and then the next council meeting in between then. And you know, you don't have to make a decision at this one. There's going to be a discussion at the Joint Planning Commission City Council meeting or City Council Planning Committee meeting, which at the right order, of course, next week. And maybe that discussion helps lubricate the thought process on what you want to do. But if we do nothing, we don't pull the plug, then after March 27th, basically we start where we were before we filed that notice. The record's due, the parties fight over the content of the record, and then it eventually goes to LUBA and stuff like that. So based on our kind of assumed timelines, if we stayed on the LUBA train, you know, we would hope for a decision by the end of the year. There's some things in LUBA like fighting over the record, which there is no statutory time limit for it. So, you know, that could be a war of attrition. Like World War I in the trenches, nobody wins, right? So you know, the timeline is very assumed in here. And I think that's why I say hopefully by the end of the year. So you kind of have three basic options. You can continue to pursue the Castor Road site. You can abandon the Castor Road site and just focus on other sites, or do both. Of course, there is a cost with LUBA, there's a cost with selection process and stuff like that, and so that's always a consideration. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to explain that to you, to help you help us decide what we want to do. And, you know, at this point, it's just for information. I think at the very least, at your next March meeting, we would want to know whether or not you want to pull that plug.
Depressing.
I was gonna say cue violin, you know, not like that's appropriate, but.
Well, and the reason that we're bringing it to you is to have some time to work on the record if they need to. That's the decision path, right?
Yeah, so. And we should back up to January 10th. So there was a January 10th special session where it seemed pretty clear that the council was done with Castor. And so at that point, and I think it was unanimous, I remember focusing on those meetings real closely because, okay, we have this 90 days, what are we gonna do within this 90-day period? So that meeting was pivotal as far as.
I don't know that an official vote was taken at March 10th. I would beg to differ. I mean, you may have heard direction, but I don't think an actual vote and a process of how the city council runs ever took place. Look at that video again.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was a vote.
I get there was a census,
but there was a discussion there.
there's a lot of people here. A lot of emotions floating around. Luckily I was able to keep my emotions out of it. That particular meeting, because I remember it quite well. And all my senses, my spidey senses were available to me.
And I'm not trying to make anybody mad. I'm just
No.
saying that.
No, but
the
I
messaging
think,
was-
but I
There
think
was messaging there.
there was messaging,
And
but
we listen to the meetings and absorb those messaging.
Absolutely.
So that's all I'm saying.
yes, and I'm just saying though, that I think if you go back and watch that video, I mean, there needs to be, for clarifications for future purposes, if this continues to pop up, I think we need to discuss this as a council. And this is part of the process right here. So I think this is all good. But the comment that was made, I don't agree with, because I was at that meeting and don't remember an actual vote being taken. So that's why I'm just stating that for the record. That's my,
Why we're talking about it, so there is a change, if staff's hasn't been working on it.
because they got the census of that.
Okay.
Yes, yep, yep. But it wasn't official.
Well, I'm not afraid to say where I'm at with it, so I think it's a hard place to be for all of us up here because we spent a lot of time and effort. I mean, the employees, everybody has spent a lot of time and effort on Castor Road, so it's been a very difficult place to come to, which is I think where the emotion is coming from with that, in my opinion. But I think that we all just want to build a police station. Like, I think that is the general thing here. So it's not about who's right or wrong or who did what wrong or what happened. It's about, okay, what can we learn from those mistakes and how can we get this police station up as quickly as possible? So, and involve the planning commission, which is what is gonna happen next week. So that's where I personally am, is I'd like to see what happens at the joint meeting. And I would like to talk about how quickly we can develop another site and what is gonna make the most economic sense and feasibility as far as getting a police station as quickly as possible. That's me.
I agree with everything Jessica has to say. I want to get it built. I think we're gonna waste a lot of time and money trying to move forward with the Castor site, and it just doesn't seem like it's worth it to me. I mean, I think it's better suited to site it somewhere else where everybody will be okay with it. That's not gonna be in floodplain.
Yeah, and I think rather than talk about it here, I think the joint meeting would be the best place. to
Yeah,
talk
I
about it
agree.
Because we have, but I was trying.
Be there, so they're my first.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, but I was just trying to clarify that there wasn't really an official vote. There was?
The motion was made by Counselor Sundin and seconded by Counselor Gunderson to investigate incremental increases in utility bills, a flat increase in utility bills, separate line items on the utility bills, timelines, and then moving forward with finding a new location that will fit the current design and building the facility. It was unanimous.
I think what you're saying is maybe there wasn't a vote to officially abandon
The loop.
Castor.
Yeah.
Which is what I think we need to figure out, but I already know how I'm leaning, but I think I would like to talk it over with the planning commission too before we make a final decision.
Agreed.
Well, there's no doubt, we all know the police station is undersized and we need a new police station. There's never been anybody up here that's ever stated any otherwise than we need to move forward. Nobody. So that we all can agree on. But the process we need, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, if it wasn't for Luba and the appeal, we'd be under construction right now.
Yeah.
It
Well,
would have been well under construction,
Cue violin again.
you know, but I mean, well under construction.
that needs to be said.
Yes. Yes, that would have been, actually, yes. It would have been.
So timelines, Jacob, if we meet with them next week, we discuss it there. Then meeting in our next regular meeting, that'll give us time to still do what needs to be done.
Make an official
Yeah,
vote.
I mean, it gives you time to at least say whether or not you wanna pull the plug or keep the fight up.
Yeah, I just, I mean, it's very difficult for me just because Luba is one of those things that even just an angry neighbor with the right credentials can file against anybody. And sometimes just to use as, and it's frustrating to me because we see this happening a lot in the world where it's weaponizing you know, when there was a lot of work done around it. Yeah, I mean, there just was ad hoc committees, the officers themselves picked the sites. All that was discussed prior to even our own planning commission denying it, and that was confusing to me, you know? Because it was such in the spotlight. There was ad hoc committees, the chief himself gave multiple meetings. And showed off the old police station. I mean, it was a huge campaign. And it was really just kind of like disheartening to see that we're where we're at today. And I understand their frustration. And you know, it's not me or anybody up here doing any of that. Okay, it's just part of the process. It's out of our control. We have zero control over that. And it's been, you know, it needs to be stated more than it has been. That we are not in control of that aspect of this. But the blame seems to get shifted. And has been. I'm speaking up on that because I've been in the side of fire, so to speak, from an organization. And that's never been my stance, ever.
And the council approved it.
Rewind the tape. Look at it, time and time again. Stating that for the record too. But just about had enough of lies. That's all it is. So thank you for the update. We look forward to the planning commission meeting. Maybe we'll have a better direction collectively of a better site. Or maybe this site is it. And they're willing to back it. I don't know. I'm only one person, one vote out of 5 that gets to make decisions here.
So in the following council meeting, would that be the time that we'd be pulling the plug on the Castle Road site then, ideally?
Well, we'd have to make a
Moving on.
decision. Yes, otherwise it would just, or the timeline would withdraw and we'd have to submit the whole thing, basically.
Well, it basically, after that, then it's basically like we've had the pause button pushed. And then after March 27th, finger comes off the pause button. So then that starts that process. So basically, you know, there was a declaration of war.
So if that
And the
process
parties said, okay, well, we'll have a standby.
So Luba could pick that up even without an attorney and look at it? With attorney present, would they follow through with their motion to look at it? And if it was looked at?
Well, our attorneys would be present for it.
We would have, our attorneys. would-
Yeah, our attorneys would be on it. And they're the ones who filed the notice to pause it. But it's just the way the law works.
Let's say we had this minimal attorney on it, or is Luba still gonna look at it? And make a decision? Even if we did nothing, is what I'm hearing you say. So if we didn't take it off. And we did hardly anything and spent hardly any money on it, but submitted that information that we have.
Oh, if we elected not to have our legal counsel shepherd it through Luba.
Yeah,
I don't.
have the mayor show up as testimony. $0 it costs the taxpayers. Can we still go through that process? So, you know what I'm saying is, maybe we don't have anything to lose.
What are the possible outcomes of it?
Cause we can plan both.
Yeah, the possible outcomes, and that is, you know, you can go down both roads. The possible outcomes are they uphold the city council decision. Or they could potentially.
I know there's some legal fees involved. Bill just popped up.
Like, hold on, your lawyer's present.
First it. And
Yeah, Bill, I'm gonna go ahead and let you chime in a little bit, cause you were, gracious
Hi,
enough
Aaron.
to.
Yeah, I'm Aaron Council. So I've been tracking what you've been talking about, and of course, Jamie Housley of the firm is the lawyer who's worked on the process at this point. But I have worked on Luba matters. Sounds like if what happens is the present site and the council's approval goes forward to Luba, yes, the council could direct that the lawyers not put a lot of involvement into preparing a brief to counter any arguments that are raised through the efforts of the petitioner. But I wouldn't recommend that, because I think that obviously the petitioner is represented by a highly competent land use lawyer, and as a result, they probably would raise issues that would almost guarantee that the decision would be overturned. And that wouldn't be a good thing. So there has to be some representation, I think, by a lawyer to defend against the issues that are raised. In terms of the oral arguments, it is not possible for someone other than an attorney to be present at LUBA to represent the city. So it's a process that would not allow for the mayor or the city administrator or the planning director to represent the city. It has to be represented by an attorney.
Okay, and then if the other attorney does win, is it true that we'd have to pay the legal fees of that complainant?
There is a process that if the decision is reversed, there is the potential for recovery of attorney fees by the petitioner, yes. So again, that's another downside of the city not putting up a defense against its actions.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend that the council not take a position that if this matter proceeds, and you now have the process in front of you, as Jacob has pointed out, that you do have the option to withdraw by March 27th. If you do that, then you've preserved some rights. You could go forward with another location. Obviously, you'd be giving up the decision that you have made, that you then have to defend at LUBA if you want to make it stick. But you would avoid a reversal if you did withdraw the action as is possible for you at this point.
Okay, it's just one of those things that I was questioning. It's very difficult situation for all of us, because it was a long drawn out process, this whole thing. Pretty emotional, and it just seems like a lot of emotions tied up, not just from us, but other departments too, that they were gonna hope that was their home. And so it's been very difficult to watch this process and get it just kind of, because somebody has some money and doesn't agree with the decision, and those key players, they can throw some money at it, the key players, it's just difficult, we know our area best. We're from here. And it's very difficult for me to look at that corner and say, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be there. And the ad hoc committee also looked at it, number 2 on the site.
I understand your concerns, Mayor, and I think, as Jacob has brought to your attention in the past, the issue is whether or not the standards that apply within the city to this location, whether or not those the conditions can be met through the approval that's been granted. And I think that's been something that Jacob has been talking with Jamie and his staff to evaluate. And I think there needs to be some conversation between the council and Jamie. If you haven't had a recent conversation, I have not been involved in any, for you to determine whether or not any decision to go forward with the present Castor Road location, whether or not that is feasible, that the opportunities to succeed at LUBA are strong. And I haven't been involved in those conversations. I'm not sure where you are with those. From my understanding, you were looking at some alternative sites. I think that's really the decision that you had to make. Do you want to continue with the present site and defend the approval that's been granted at LUBA, or do you want to move on to a different location? I think. Well,
it was a familiar response from all attorneys was, I think we have a pretty good case, but there's no 100% guarantee. And then that it could be a year out. I mean, just like any attorney's never gonna question how somebody's or a board or commission is going to rule in any case.
Well, you're right, there are no guarantees. However, if the process is to proceed, then a decision needs to be made so that the record can be prepared. And Jacob is correct, there can be objections to the record, which could result in some delay. But once the record is set, then the process would move pretty quickly. Once the record is established, then the petitioner would need to provide their brief within 21 days. And following that, the city would have 21 days, and then a date for the oral argument would be set. And the oral argument, of course, would be dependent on what the other docketed items are that LUBA has. But once a record's set, that moves fast. At this point, I don't think the record has been prepared, because what I just heard Jacob say is he's waiting for direction whether or not to put effort into that. If the city is going to consider another site, there's no reason to do that. But if you're fixed on this site, he needs a decision so that the record can be prepared as soon as possible and potentially move this process along quickly.
Well, and I think it was prepared, our conversation, it was just left out.
Oh, the record's been prepared? Okay, great.
Well,
The record has not been prepared.
okay, then what was it? Then what exactly were we told? Because there was a ingress egress at the back that was not part of the record, and that's why it was withdrawn. Is part of the plan.
If you didn't file, if the city did not file the notice of withdrawal, the record would have been due like January 3rd or something. But because of the pause.
So what am I trying to say then? What am I trying to say? That we left that piece out and that was the reason for the pause?
If the pause stops, then we go back to beginning, and then Lubo say the record is due at this date, then we do the record. If I recall, the pause was to buy time to help think about it. Then you had that January meeting, and then since then, there's been efforts to talk about alternative sites. That effort continues, including next week with the Joint Planning Commission City Council.
Okay, that's not what I heard originally, John.
What Jacob's saying to me makes sense, so I'm not sure what
Yeah.
to say here.
No,
The
I'm not.
the amount of time for us to submit the record was really short, and that's why we put after this motion for reconsideration and pause it. And then, and after that meeting, when we did that extension, we didn't do any more work on it, so. The record it doesn't exist, we have to amend it, or Jacob needs to do some work on.
Okay.
The record is just assembling all the documents.
I would really like to, it would have been nice to at least have the update of our attorney here, because I know what I heard. That was working on this in this discussion prior to, just to have it, maybe the planning commission could have that available. We'd have them available for that discussion, which is in just a week, just because a brief update. Just because I think everybody needs to hear for the record what's going on this, because I heard that the argument would be stronger if that was included,
Yes. Yeah, that was the idea, is that we
because it was not in the original,
needed time to put
the
these.
back access point.
Yeah, it was reinforcing the alternatives analysis findings.
Yeah.
The Findings in the
If I
record
may,
now.
if I may, to do that, I believe the council needs to, through its process, reopen the public hearing to get that additional information into the record. That can't be put into the record unless it gets in front of the city council.
Okay, that
And that's why that January meeting is so.
direction. That's what that direction
It's
was.
so pivotal, because if we reopen the record, it requires legal notice.
Right.
And there's not time for that now. So that January meeting is very important. It's very.
But I heard that, But nobody else has heard what I heard. Except for you guys, I've obviously heard it, and, I didn't realize that that was that critical to get that, and that was the process, was to reopen, because that was discussed a little bit too. Sounds like it's too late now anyhow, so, yeah, no problem. We'll move on.
If you'd like an update from Jamie, I think I can send a note to Jamie and ask him to work with Jacobs so that
I
you
would.
get some status report on Wednesday if you'd like.
If the timeline was missed, that, you know, was everybody completely aware of the timeline that was missed too? I don't think I was completely. What I'm hearing now. So,
Sounds like we can try to get an update at the joint meeting.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you, Jacob. It's always one of them hot topic items. Okay, now we're gonna go, and I know what this one's about. I heard when, you propose changes to payment processing, our financial director, Gloria Bush.
Yes, so this is a big win.
Yep.
I like your haircut, by the way.
Thank you. It really came to my attention almost immediately when I started here, was that we were paying way too much for our credit card processing fees. And part of it is because we've got a lot of hands in that cookie jar. We've got the bank. We've got the payment processor that is linked to our Tyler Encode ERP system. And we've got, we did have a couple Square accounts. And we've gotten rid of the Square accounts and we've gotten everything mostly with the bank and Tyler. So we've wrapped those kind of up. And then our Dawn, our primary utility billing person, she became aware of how much we were paying per credit card swipe. So, and that was just a little tip of that iceberg. So we got information from the bank, we got information from Tyler Encode, the payment processor. It's one that's just linked with Tyler. It's their own system and it's super, super expensive. And they try to make you believe that you don't have any choices. But legally you do. And so Jamie and Dawn both went and got some different quotes from different companies, and Express Bill Pay came back and almost immediately said, I can save you $26,000 a month just on your credit card processing fees.
Yeah. I know. Yep, so.
While we were at it, we got some information from a couple of other bill mailing services. We currently use Metro. And so we got two other quotes from Ben Mailing and from DataBar. And Ben Mailing came out with about $1,200 savings a month. So all told, between the two, if we went with Ben Mailing and Express Bill Pay, we're at about $327,000 a year.
Right now.
Yep, that's why she's here.
That's why we brought it to you.
And I really want to put a shout out to my team.
Yes,
They've
absolutely.
really done a lot of work on this, and it's taken a couple months to put it all together. And
Can you remind us who your team is?
so it kind of was headed up by Dawn Richardson and Jamie Edwards.
Jamie.
All of the backup and
Johnson
Parsons and everything.
Wow, awesome. Yes, ladies, you rock.
Yes.
Yeah, it started off as an effort to, what can we do to save money?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
self-reflection, where are we spending it, how can we save it, and thinking ahead next year. But you're seeing this now because it's so significant that we want to do it as soon as possible. So we've got the contracts together, they're in place for your consideration. Start saving as soon as
So
possible.
as soon as we can get this switched over, the better.
Right now.
Yes,
Sign it.
and they'll no longer be coming from Seattle, they'll be coming from Bend. So. Well, Bill no longer be coming from Seattle, Washington.
Yes.
Since State, Oregon, that's right. So. Okay, thank you, Gloria.
Thank you.
John, I'm gonna go ahead and push you up till tonight because we have a 5:30. Yep, and I wanna make sure everybody has time to eat, do
We
we?
have food.
Yeah,
Lisa got us sandwiches.
yeah, so. I mean, so go ahead and do your report then. This, you probably got a ton of stuff on there.
Because there's food involved.
Yeah.
Well, not a ton, hopefully, but there's some good things, but.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Mayor. First of all, I wanted to share that the city was successful when we received a notice of intent to receive 2.3, a little over 2.3 million from Business Oregon to help fund the development of the substation at the mill site. It's through the Industrial Alliance program. And, there's a lot of discussion, there's even discussion, a meeting earlier today that we missed because of conflict of this meeting to talk about this, how are we gonna address this looming energy shortage in our region mostly for industrial development. And that industrial just takes up so much of the load. But this will help get us a little further along with the electricals at the mill site. There was also a similar application that the county was successful with that awarded funding to look at the transmission study, so how the electricity comes. Right now it comes all the way from Portland at the Harborton Station. There's some alternatives up on the hill there. There's a pretty big 4 miles out of town. You go up the hill, there's all the power we need up there. We can get a connection to it. We've been working with PUD and PGE and Business Oregon and kind of a lot of that issue is, the deciding factor for whether or not Project Sprint moves forward. They need a certain minimum capacity of electrical load to be successful. So. And the LOI with Project Sprint expires on March 31st. Mohammed and I and others have had meetings with them. They do not intend to renew they're not going to make another request to extend. They feel like that's, they have all the information they need. We're going to get a decision one way or the other. So, if it comes, it's a game changer in so many ways about having a tech hub, all the jobs and investment, the impacts to renewal, general city's overall finances.
Well, and again, it comes back to the power issue. If we had all the power that they ever needed, they would have been building here already. That's the only thing. That was the big factor. So hopefully. We're still running. We're still hopeful.
Okay, I'm hoping for a phone call.
Yeah.
Or call me right
What
away.
I know. So we talked about the undergrounding power. I think that's pretty clear that the importance of doing it and money we're saving by unfortunately having delay. That project actually started out where that intersection was a separate project and we added it to the project that was done by another designer, and we bid them together. So that's one of the reasons it got missed. So Jacob just finished on the police state was March 3rd. We'll try to get the attorneys there to give a recap on the existing Castor Road site and really see where the council wants to focus its resources. If it's on the Luba, if it's working on a specific site or several sites, and Mackenzie will be there. They'll talk about the scoring criteria that they've used on previous efforts. They've done a designer level effort for the sheriff's office site, if that's even consideration, not putting a lot of effort into it, just enough to draw a square on the site and pros and cons. meeting with the Police Association on March 15th to work on our 2025 COLA, which will help inform our budget. And then we have some other resolving, a few other issues that we're working with. Collective bargaining agreement. Our last meeting, we got a report from the forester, Brent Keller at Mason Bruce Gerard. City is, working towards having the sustainable yield forest, or 2,100 acres of timber in a sustainable yield where we can cut a certain amount every year, or every other year. It's more efficient to always have that resource growing all the time. And we heard that we have a cut that's ready to go. It's in that sweet spot of time to cut that the price is good, but not great, but it's still good. And I just wanted to ask the council, and moreover, there's more coming on in 5 to 7 years. We're gonna get a nice, getting in a pretty good place in a few years. If we want to go out for a sale, in the past, when you've done this, you've directed me to work with the forester to prepare a sale. We've gone out, done bids. The council has an opportunity to accept or reject those bids. If you want to do that.
I think it's a good idea to direct John to do that. We nice to have the money.
Where is that money going?
The money, because it's a one-time revenue, can come into the community development fund like it has historically. It doesn't mean that it can't be taken out of the community development fund and to supplant the budget for general fund purposes.
Okay.
I think,
I think that's one of the solutions this year that's going to be proposed to make the budget balance. But we want to have enough that it's not really one time. There is going to be, if we get to a sustainable spot, then it's a lot better, right? So we don't want to have,
We're getting close.
We don't have to go another 5 years before cutting again, then we can't rely on that revenue. It's one time.
So do we
wanna do that right now?
directed? We can do that.
If that's the consensus, I can work with Brent. We can get a sale documents together. There's a little bit of work with, the crews and survey determining the yield, stuff that we do every time we do a sale.
Well, and I think it needed to happen by now is what I heard him when he presented, but we shouldn't wait too long.
Right.
To make that decision.
Yeah, usually this is about the time of year that sales go out.
I think it makes sense I would rather have than potentially lay somebody off or something if we had a few extra 100,000 that we move over.
I'm on board with it as long as we find a way to get it into the general fund to utilize it to balance our budget.
And at this point, we're just looking at options, right? Like you said, we can still, we can reject it if we would like to.
Yeah, there'll be bids, yeah.
Yeah, that sale.
Usually gets like 3, right?
Yeah, some years more. Yeah.
We'll look at them.
I'm good with that. And then he'll even show up with them and say, I recommend you do this in your past.
Sometimes it's not all of it, sometimes just portions of it. I remember right.
Yep, because we had the 3, but we have 1 left now.
Just one.
Yeah.
So the Riverwalk, I'll be happy to do that. I'll get going on that soon, very soon. Not today. The Riverwalk project bids are due tomorrow for the Riverwalk project. Is a refresher. This project has been scaled down pretty dramatically as far as in scope, removing some of the key project elements like the amphitheater and the playground, and really focusing on leveraging getting those grant dollars that would otherwise go away at some point. And hopefully all goes well and we have enough available funding to
be nice.
How many bids do we have?
We don't know yet. They're due tomorrow, so they'll be due tomorrow, open tomorrow.
Okay.
I can, share results, see where we're at. So the tourism contract RFP it's been talked about a lot lately. Council Hubbard, Sundin, and I have been meeting with Attorney Peter Hicks on a new contract for ETC, and at our last check-in, Attorney Hicks, Peter said you're outside the window. You need to do an RFP, and So I brought that back, shared that information at the last meeting. And the reality is, we do need to do an RFP. We also do need to do a contract. And in order to have a decent RFP, it's gonna take some time. There's a lot of detail that it's gone back to 16, 17. There's the contract, and then there's the RFP process. And the RFP process begins with RFP document, and which just details everything we want out of the contractor. Contract is more of a boilerplate contract. What the city wants out of the contract.
So if I can just help you out with this just a little bit, because I kind of went to John too, after listening to Mr. Freehind's comment about this half a year contract. And the RFP discussion, because I understood that the RFP, the contract is what you guys were working on. And then when Peter said we have to do an RFP, the RFP process requires timelines. It only makes sense to extend the contract and start doing the RFP, whether it be in August, and let it sit for 2 months, and close it. Give people plenty of room to look at that contract and see what we get for bids. And have a person selected by November. End of November, no later than that. It only makes sense. Then they're trying to do a half a year contract. That's right in the middle of 13 nights, 4th of July, is right up June 30th, 4th of July, and then Halloween Town.
I agree with,
Run this year out.
I agree with that 100%. I think that gives more time to get the contract the way it needs to be for everybody to be satisfied with it, because I think we can make it work.
Yep.
And then start with 2025, do it that way.
It only makes sense. I mean, the RFP is due, so it gives, it's not just a contract, it's a whole new, whoever wants to bid on it can. And I hope Tina will be.
I think my frustration with it is just that we didn't know that there needed to be an
Yeah,
RFP.
we
I
did.
feel like that's something we need to know.
Well-
Like how often, like just like with any other type of industry that we hire RFPs for, I think that we should know that, and it should be a transparent thing. That way it doesn't turn into a circus, you know, like that should be something that we know. Okay, every 2 years we can expect that we need to go out for an RFP because that's the law. And every, you know, so often we know that contracts have to be revamped and that it's not hurting anyone's feelings, or like it's not because of any in particular scenario, but this is the process that we follow. I think
Exactly.
we need to have that.
Yep.
So one of the dynamics that's kind of informed that when issue is the independent contractor agreement, because one of the tests of having an independent contractor agreement is, you know, who else has had the opportunity to bid on this work. So
That's right.
It's, you know, my recommendation, Bill is on the line and kind of queued up on what a possible motion might look like to extend it to the end of the year, whether you wanted to do that tonight at your work session action items or some other time.
Yeah.
But he's up here now and ready to talk about that if you'd like.
Yeah, I can comment on that. So Pete Hicks, of course, has been working on the project, and he agrees with what you've just been talking about, that there's a need for a new RFP to obtain a contractor for after, I guess, beginning of January 1, which would also be beneficial to move the contract to that cycle so that it's not falling due the next time within a period of time that you're having events. But in the meantime, there would be the need for an emergency declaration for extending the present contract through the end of 2024. And that's where Pete is able to help you. I think Matthew Call has started to work on some language to provide for you. You could adopt that at your next council meeting, not necessarily tonight, but I think the direction that you should give is that we should proceed from the city attorney's end to bring forward to you an emergency declaration to extend the existing contract through the end of December, and work on developing proposals language for a new contract that would be put into an RFP to be completed sometime this summer, to be sent out, so the process could be completed before the end of the year, and either the existing contractor or someone else, so it all depends on what the city's choice is, that new contract goes into place next year. One of the things that Pete has pointed out is the contract, I believe, had I guess, a 3-year provision with the opportunity for 2 one-year extensions. You've done one of the extensions, and I think that's the case. So that's why there's a need for the emergency, and the emergency can be justified because of the fact that we're at a time now that the various events that the city typically holds could be in jeopardy if the present contractor is not used to keep those projects on course.
Sure. That's why yes, that would be the justification for doing it. It makes sense.
When do we see the ideal time being? So you're saying the end of the year, January, but that's what happened this time. And that's not a good time because that's when bands are being booked. That's when 13 Nights is being planned. So
No. So he was talking about having it ready in summer and putting it out, and we could actually let it sit for a month or 2 months and actually pick somebody by November.
Right.
By November.
The idea being that whoever.
Or January 1. For January 1.
But whoever is interested is going to have time to go through the events, see the events happening.
Right. Yeah, that's right. The work that Councilor Hubbard and John and Pete have done to start to work on the contract language, that's all moved pretty well. That work can be finalized sometime in the next couple of months, and then the full package, including the time frame for going through the process to obtain a contractor that would be on board as of January 1. That should proceed smoothly. But in the meantime, there's a need to have this year's projects undertaken using the existing contractor, and that would be done through an emergency clause to extend the contract that has already been in place.
That can be done in the next council meeting.
Yeah, exactly, with the proper language that Pete and Matthew are working on. That's right. But tonight you can give direction that makes sense to you. If that does, that there's the two steps that you're running parallel right now. One, to get the emergency
have a double vote and put the process get the ball rolling.
That's right.
For next meeting. So.
And then it's probably not Bill, it's Pete, it sounds like, but getting some advice from our attorneys on when to do an RFP and how that process will look, if it needs to be annual, or what the rules are regarding when that needs to be done, so we don't wind up in this situation again. Yeah.
It'll be all part
Good
of
planning, some good planning.
Yeah, so if I could comment on that, that's already in your procurement rules. You have a set of procurement rules, and they've been in place. That's what we used before to obtain the present contractor. Those would apply, and those should be available to you. You perhaps haven't had a chance to look at them. They're quite lengthy. They're probably about 100 pages in length. And with your transitions of finance directors over the last couple of years, it's possible that members of the council really haven't been given a full orientation to those rules, but that would be recommended. So you can be aware of how the rules apply for certain types of contracts, because materials and services contracts and contracts for independent contractors and public improvement projects, they differ.
Well, okay.
Good advice, Bill, as always.
Yes, thank you. All right, John, what else you got on your report?
Oh, I was just reminiscing about some of the procurement conferences I've been to about ORS 279 A, B, and C, and how enlightening they are.
Yeah. If you ever want to fall asleep, you know what to read.
Yeah. Okay, moving on here, the budget, Gloria's been working diligently with saving us lots of money, and her staff has been wonderful. But getting the department's budget worksheets in, and we meet later in April because there's a lot of things we don't know until the first part of the year. And for example, Kathy represented us at the CIS conference last week, and they unveiled their insurance rates, the medical insurance rates, all the premiums. So we can put those inputs into the budget, and
I'm sure it increases, it never decreases.
It's significant, like 10%.
Yeah, it never decreases, ever. Hasn't since I've been here.
Zero, but it doesn't, yeah. Doesn't go down. I've been working on a community grant through the Columbia River PUD. their, Economic Development Grant Program to try and get the power upgraded in McCormick Park. So right now there's a very modest amount of power in this, doesn't barely, you can't have any food carts or popcorn makers or any kind of anything like that, but
Well, maybe a popcorn maker, but not much more.
the one out here.
Generator, you can have anything you want.
But if you want to put up a generator noise, that's actually was part of the application, is not have to have generator noise at events and things. But yeah, we're working on that. They reviewed it yesterday or Monday at their meeting. Want me to come back and talk about at the next board meeting and just a little more detail about where the transformers needs a new transformer, needs a new service. They just want to talk a little bit more about it.
That's good.
I'll be going there and do that. Looks like there was support for it. One of our meeting with Brooke Cisco here fairly soon to can scope out the project. The Realtor Services RFP is due tomorrow. We advertised it and I invited 10 area realtors. We're starting to get a few proposals in. And we'll have the meeting that we talked about as far as selection and if the council wants to make a formal motion or if you want to ratify with the selection committee comes up with, that's a decision I guess we could probably talk about.
Yeah. I think sooner than later. Especially how we have some current appraisals, otherwise you get them too outdated and you won't even be able to discuss those until you get another appraisal. It's frustrating.
Did we assign 2 counselors to do that?
There's 2 counselors,
Okay.
myself, Mohammed. If you're comfortable with the committee making the recommendation or making the selection, and then you can ratify it at your next meeting. We do that occasionally when things are timely.
I think that would be all right. Who was the counselors on that?
Hubbard.
Wasn't me, was it? I thought it was.
But there might be interviews.
You're okay with it?
Well, I'm just trying to get the process, we have some appraisals that are gonna be outdated sooner than later. Yeah.
Lobbying efforts as far as working with Rachel and Chief Greenway and the city submitted a letter of support related to the Measure 110 reform that ended up, the legislation got passed. So now there's some tools to address some of Measure 110 and hopefully improve the drug problems we have in our state.
It's not done yet, right? The governor is on the governor's desk.
Pretty close, yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
No, I hope not.
Yeah, I don't, she's ready to get tough on that stuff too.
And some cities were in the camp of 100% repeal, and then there's kind of the other end of the spectrum of leave alone, and 3 forms somewhere in the middle. The league felt like it was, and I'm on that executive legislative committee, felt like it was better than they would hope they might get. So.
Well, I think there's a reason why it passed, right? Because people thought it was gonna have all these great intentions. So it's not that people were against it. I think it's just about how to actually enact it, so that actually helps people.
That's right.
That's the problem.
That's it.
So we have a special meeting here in a little less than 45 minutes.
Yes, and I would encourage anybody to ask tough questions of the anything and everything. I run down some, federal fund, VJ system. This is very barely just touched, and it seems like it keeps bouncing back here over the last 6 years. And it has been going on for 6 years. So I would encourage everybody to ask a lot of questions.
I read most of that report and I'll tell you, it's very difficult.
That is, yeah.
It's a beast.
Yeah.
Mundane.
Yeah, it's very. This is a legacy project. This is something we've been working on for at least 10 years. And the concept is, can we repurpose the lagoon? Is there other places to go? We've done alternative analysis. We've looked at putting conceptual level, 30% design level, wastewater treatment facilities in different locations. We've never talked about it being the Portland Superfund dump site. There's materials that comes out of the harbor that's not hazardous that could potentially go there, but that wasn't.
We're not saying it's gonna go there, but.
We're not saying it's gonna go there.
Right now.
And the most recent effort that we're working on right now, that we're gonna look at here in just a few minutes, is about structural integrity of the berm. Is the berm
Really hold.
Will it hold in the event of a big earthquake? And so that's what you're gonna look at.
But I think still being new enough, you could ask about the hazardous material, which they will talk about was, cause I know, cause I've been through this process, but, I think you should hear it from them. I'm not gonna try even to tell you what I know. Because I wanna make sure I'm not influencing you, ask these people if you have any questions.
I mean, the focus is always, the project has always been about community safety. You know, we're interested in this concept if it's safe, and it's always been conditioned with, can we do it safely? Can it be done safely?
No decisions have been made. Ever.
And no decisions have been made.
Nope, it's just exploratory right now, that's all it is, that's why.
Is part of this idea, John, the fact that the lagoon is much bigger than we need?
Lagoon is grossly oversized.
Is that still true if Project Sprint comes through and or the mill opens up?
A little bit, yes, quite a bit, about half, well, and talking to Aaron. But
Good question.
We could cut that lagoon in size in half and still have the meet our needs.
yes,
Right now, probably.
but we could do nothing and we could have 10 of those businesses feeding that site too, because then it is optimal size.
And there are concerns with the berm, like.
The
John
report-
just said,
the
is
report's gonna show that.
make sure the lagoon is safe and that
Like
it's
this
doing
too,
its
like,
job and
I
that
don't know.
we know how to like move forward with
That's
making
where-
sure the lagoon safely.
We're gonna hear about, so, and it's all grant money. I mean, all of this effort has been the grant money with some staff time attached to it. Then you see a card for Rachel Berry.
Oh.
Rachel Berry's.
Yes, it does.
That's at the end of the month. And
Right.
sign that.
Yeah.
I think that's on the-
I haven't signed it yet either.
We were expecting Russ, he never showed.
He'll be here he wasn't gonna make it, but he'll be here tonight.
Yeah, tonight, right? Probably not for the special.
He said he'd be there.
Okay. Okay, anything else, John? I wanna.
Sure.
Well,
Check my legs.
hold on, I wanna say real quick, shout out to Rachel Berry, she's been a phenomenal employee and a huge asset to the city, and we're sad to see her go. But, maybe someday our paths will cross again, you never know.
Almost poetic,
I'm
Jessica.
gonna save it for next meeting, but yeah.
Yeah.
I love Rachel, she's been awesome.
You're gonna be here next meeting, aren't you?
Yes,
Okay.
are we gonna talk about that?
Well, it's not, yeah, that's gonna be in the month.
Well, he brought it up though, so I wanted to say.
Look at that little sign.
Sorry, what is it? I had to assist my wife. We're babysitting our grandson this week, and he had to be changed, and it takes two people with a 13-month-old in our stage in life. So I wasn't sure if I missed anything in the last couple of minutes. Did you need me any further?
I don't think so, Bill.
What's his name,
Okay.
Bill?
His name is Cal, and he's the son of a city employee down in Wilsonville, my daughter Zoe.
Oh,
John
nice.
knows.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 13 months old, and he's yeah.
All right, no, we're just getting ready to gavel out, so thank you very much.